This is John Payne with a welcome to Stars Over Hollywood, presented by Carnation Evaporated Milk. Here is your host for Carnation, Art Ballinger.
Welcome to Hollywood, home and workshop of the world's most glamorous people. Each week, Stars Over Hollywood is brought to you by Carnation, the world's favorite brand of evaporated milk. And today we present Back Home Again, starring John Payne. Ladies, when you buy milk, remember that no other kind of milk has as many uses as Carnation.
Carnation for cooking.
Carnation for coffee.
Carnation for baby feeding.
Yes, it's Carnation bringing you Stars Over Hollywood. And speaking of stars, here's a young man who's been going along the last few years, doing a little of everything and doing it all well. John Payne.
Oh, thank you, Art.
John, what's the latest picture you've made for Paramount?
It's a Technicolor production for Pine Thomas called Caribbean Gold, and it's due to be released very soon.
Sounds like a picture well worth seeing. Our listeners should put it down as a must, along with such other important things as Carnation Evaporated Milk. Carnation, you know, is the milk that performs cooking miracles not possible with any other form of milk. And here's why. Carnation milk is specially heat refined. That means you get smoother blending of your cooking ingredients, plus better quality and flavor when you use Carnation. And besides that, Carnation is concentrated to more than double richness. Carnation is so rich, in fact, that even when you dilute it with an equal amount of water, you still have milk that's richer than your state standard for bottled milk. Yet Carnation costs a lot less than bottled milk. So for all milk purposes, and most cream purposes, enjoy the richness, the better cooking qualities of Carnation, the milk from contented cows. And now, Act One of Back Home Again, starring John Payne in the role of Joe Gort. Curtain going up. The story began with an item carried by all the big news services. Owing to the unprecedented prosperity of farmers during recent years, the news story said, the little village of Newton, population 1,183, is the wealthiest town per capita in the state. That item was read with interest by everyone, economists, appliance salesmen, and others. Among the others was a one-time resident of Newton, Joe Gort.
That's what I was saying. Now, don't rush me. Just let me tell it my own way. When I read that thing in the paper, I got a funny feeling, hometown pride and hate all mixed up. Newton, the wealthiest town in the state. Newton, the town that sent me to reform school. I decided to come back to Newton.
Ain't they apt to recognize you, Joe?
Nobody from Newton's seen me in 20 years. I was 14 when they sent me away. I've changed, Jake. More than my name.
Maybe. Still, it sounds like an awful little town for a stranger to hang around the bank without being noticed.
I won't hang around the bank, Jake, except when I've got business there.
What business?
Banking business. I'm going to take some of the dough we have stashed and deposit in the bank. It'll give me a legitimate excuse for being there at the same time.
Gee, I'd never thought of that.
That's why I take 60 and you and Marty split 40.
Yeah.
Incidentally, where is Marty?
I got a little high, went out to have a talk with a dame. He says he's been two-timing him.
That jerk. This is the last job we're going to use him on.
Yeah, well, you tell him. I don't want any part of that job.
I'll tell him.
He's an awful good man with the rod, Joe.
Too good. He's kill crazy. Now, look, I'm going to Newton in the morning. When I have everything figured out and timed, I'll wire you and Marty to come down and handle your end of the job.
Okay.
And be sure he behaves himself. Newton's my hometown. If anybody's killed on this job, I want to pick him and handle it myself. I was plenty mighty nervous when I got off the train, wondering if anybody had recognized me. And my blood pressure practically blew a gasket when I went in the bank and bumped right smack into Judge Henning, the JP who sent me up. He didn't recognize me, so I went over to the cashier.
Yes, sir. What can I do for you?
My name's Gort, Joseph T. Gort. I've come to Newton looking for a business opportunity. Perhaps a farm that's a good buy, or a store. I'm open-minded.
Well, there are several good buys here or hereabouts, Mr. Gort, but I'm afraid they all require considerable capital.
That's why I came to the bank first, to establish credit. I'd like to open an account with this cashier's check.
Oh, yes, sir. Well, $25,000.
If I need more, it's available.
Well, it'll probably be a couple of days before you can draw against this.
Oh, that's all right. I don't expect to buy the first thing I see.
Yes, I can understand that.
As a matter of fact, I'd appreciate any advice you could give me.
Well, you could probably get much better advice from that man you bumped into as you entered the bank.
Oh?
And the gentleman was Judge Henning. Oh, this is his daughter coming over now.
Daughter? Judge Henning's daughter?
Mm-hmm. Hi, Martha.
Oh, hello, Bob.
Martha, I'd like you to meet Mr. Gort. Mr. Gort, Miss Henning.
How do you do?
Hello.
Mr. Gort's come to Newton looking for a business opportunity, Martha.
Wonderful. Newton could use some new blood.
I'm certain it'll get some.
I hope so. Say, why don't you ask Mr. Gort to come to lunch with us, Bob? Maybe we can sell him Dad's farm.
Hey, great idea. Would you care to have lunch with us, Mr. Gort?
Any man that turned down a chance to have lunch with Miss Henning would be a fool.
Well, thank you. Bob doesn't ever say things like that. Do you, Bob?
He's a banker, Miss Henning. Bankers are notoriously cold-blooded.
Besides, Mr. Gort, I'm engaged to the girl. Well, shall we eat?
That was quite a lunch. Bob was trying hard to talk business opportunities, but Martha and I weren't listening. We were talking to each other about each other. Before we left the restaurant, I managed to get myself invited to a box social that was going to be that night. I had the dough to outbid Bob, so I had supper with Martha and took her home afterwards.
Oh, I had a wonderful time, Mr. Gort. I don't know how to thank you.
You might start by forgetting that Mr. Gorton calling me Joe.
All right, Joe.
Why the hesitation?
I don't know. You're different from anyone I've ever known.
In what way?
Oh, it's difficult to say. Maybe it's the fact that you were the only man at the social who was willing to pay $20 for his supper.
I'd have paid $100 if necessary. I believe in eliminating competition quickly.
No matter what the cost?
I don't go after anything unless I want it badly, Martha. And if I want it badly enough, I usually get it.
Not always?
No, just usually.
You know, you're a little frightening.
I'm sorry. I wouldn't willingly frighten you for anything in the world.
I'm sure you wouldn't. Oh, Joe. Please, Joe.
You left your purse at the school, Martha.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Thank you very much.
That's all right. If you're going to your hotel, Mr. Gort, I'll walk down with you.
Oh, sure.
I have to go in now anyway. I hope I'll see you again, Mr. Gort.
Don't worry, Miss Henning. You will. Good night.
I'm in love with Martha, Mr. Gort.
Yeah?
She's never been out of Newton. She doesn't know much about men like you.
What do you mean, men like me?
Why, men who've been around. She's a wonderful girl, Mr. Gort, and I'd hate to see her unhappy.
Can't argue that with you. What are you driving at?
Why, I just wish you'd stay away from her.
I'll be glad to.
Oh, thanks.
Anytime she tells me that she wants me to stay away from her.
Oh, so that's the way it is, huh?
Yeah, that's the way it is. I think she's a wonderful girl, too. But I don't think I'd make her unhappy.
But you just met her today. You don't know anything about her.
I know she's Judge Henning's daughter. That's all I need to know. I know that romance and bank robberies don't mix. And this is the first time in my life that I'd ever let pleasure interfere with my business, but I was so anxious to get even, really even, with Judge Henning that I almost forgot what brought me to Newton. And Martha was such a chump, such a beautifully lovely chump that she made it a pleasure to forget. Using the judge's car and gas, she carted me all over the countryside looking for my opportunity, never guessing that as far as I was concerned, she was it.
I hope I'll be able to find something to interest you soon, Joe.
You wouldn't have to look outside this car.
You know, I don't believe you're really looking for a business opportunity.
What makes you say that?
Well, Bob doesn't think you are.
No. And why does he think I'd come to a town like Newton?
Well, that's what puzzles him.
I see. I guess I better have a little heart-to-heart talk with Bob.
Oh, he's just jealous, Joe.
Yeah, maybe. But I don't like nosy people. Particularly when they get nosy about my business.
Don't talk that way, Joe.
Huh? What way?
The way you were talking. That look in your eyes. And your mouth. You looked as though you were ready to curl back your lips and bite.
I wouldn't ever bite you.
I hope not.
Why don't you pull over the side of the road and park so we can talk?
Like this?
No. Like this.
Oh, Joe.
You love me, Martha?
I'm all mixed up. At times like that, I'm sure I do. Other times... What did you do before you came to Newton, Joe?
Why, I've been interested in finance.
It's awfully vague.
Look, baby, a dollar needs no references. In my own way, I've done pretty well, and I expect to do a lot better before I leave Newton. But right now, I just can't seem to concentrate on money. You know what I mean?
I know.
Well?
I can't, Joe. I'm engaged to Bob. Before you came to Newton, I couldn't imagine a life without him.
And you should be very grateful for what I've done to your imagination.
Please don't joke. Bob's a wonderful boy, and...
Yeah. He's still just that, a boy.
I've known him all my life. And I know that he's decent and honest.
Meaning?
Meaning that I respect him. And I'm going to have to be awfully sure in my own mind before I do anything that would hurt him.
You'll be awfully sure, baby. Come here.
And so the curtain falls on the first act of today's radio drama, Back Home Again, starring John Payne and brought to you by Carnation Evaporated Milk. Before we return to the second act, let's see if we can account for the high spirits this morning of Carnation's Home Service Director, Mary Blake. Mary, you're looking mighty self-satisfied.
Well, why shouldn't I, Art? Haven't you seen the current issue of Life magazine? One of my special recipes is being featured in a color advertisement for Carnation Evaporated Milk.
You mean that casserole of creamed ham and peas that seems to pop right out of the page at you?
That's the ad, Art. You can see why I take such pride in my Carnation cream sauce recipes.
You forget, Mary, Carnation cream sauce is nothing new to me. I know it's the best cream sauce you can possibly make. It's failure-proof, richer, smoother, and no lumps.
That's right, Art. You see, Carnation is specially heat refined. And when you combine it with your other cream sauce ingredients over low heat, you get quick, smooth, and easy blending, which gives you a better quality cream sauce all around.
And certainly no cream sauce could have richer flavor.
Yes, that's the other big advantage of Carnation, Art. You get richer flavor because Carnation itself is more than double rich.
Well, Mary, I'm going to suggest to the ladies listening that for the creamiest cream sauce they've ever made, and for one of the best dishes they ever tasted, they should see the current issue of Life magazine for Mary Blake's special recipe for Carnation cream sauce with ham and peas. Another cooking miracle, not possible with any other form of milk, but made easy with heat-refined, double-rich Carnation Evaporated Milk. return now to the second act of Back Home Again, starring John Payne in the role of Joe Gort.
When I knew I had Martha hooked any time I wanted to make my move, I concentrated on the bank. That was a cinch. It was a pushover, and I wired Jake and Marty to come on. When they hit town and came into my room, Marty was so high he had himself believing he was Billy the Kid. I was tempted to drive him out in the country and put one through his head. I wish now I had.
He swore he wouldn't even take a drink, Joe. Then he went to the men's room and came back like this.
Why didn't you kill him right there on the train?
I never thought of it. Besides, he could kill me first.
Any time, Jake. You either, Joe.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We may check into that sometime, Marty.
What's wrong with now, Joe?
I've got other things on my mind.
Joe's thinking about dough, Marty. Important dough. Don't bother him with his small talk about killing.
I like to talk about killing.
Well, I think it's both gruesome and illegal. Now, let's stop it and talk some legitimate business. When do we knock off this bank, Joe?
Tomorrow afternoon at closing time. If you can get this thing straightened up in time.
Lay off me, Joe, or I'm going to choose you.
Don't. Not unless you feel real lucky.
I do, Joe. I feel real lucky.
Why don't you two guys quit before I'm in business by myself?
Yeah. Hell, okay, Jake. Now, here's the setup. At 2:45, I go into the bank and start talking with Bob Rogers, the cashier. At 5 minutes to 3, you two come in. That Burns character sure knew what he was talking about when he made that crack about mice and men, didn't he? Anyway, after warning Jake to keep Marty in the room so he couldn't get into trouble, I left to keep a date with Martha. We drove out in the country again and parked. Hey.
I'm sorry, Joe. My elbow hit the horn button.
Oh.
Why are you so nervous tonight, Joe?
Why, I didn't think I was.
Well, you certainly acted.
I guess I've been thinking too much about business.
Have you made your decision?
Yeah, I have.
Are you going to buy Dad's farm?
I don't think so.
Oh. I wish you'd reconsider, Joe. Dad has to sell the farm and...
Well, he doesn't have to sell it to me, does he?
No. It's only that I was raised there, and I'd like to raise my children there.
Raise kids?
Of course, Joe.
Yeah. I guess I hadn't been thinking that far ahead.
I have. The first one's going to be a boy. Joe Jr.
Yeah? How do you know the first one will be a boy?
Because I want a boy to be first. A boy just like you, Joe. So that when he grows up, he'll be successful and strong and...
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you were a cute little boy.
Sure. Everybody said I'd go a long way. Then they sent me.
What do you mean?
Oh, nothing. Why are we talking about kids?
Well, it's the natural thing, isn't it? When people are going to be married.
I guess it is.
We are going to be married, aren't we, Joe?
Oh, sure we are, baby. Just as soon as we get to the city.
You mean we're not going to be married here, at home?
I wasn't planning on it. I figured we'd go to the city and see a friend of mine who was a JP, get married quietly, go on our honeymoon, then come back.
Oh, I'd rather be married here at home, Joe, with Dad performing the ceremony.
What? I hadn't thought of that. Say, that's a great idea. That's perfect, him marrying you to me.
I hoped you'd like it.
Oh, I do, baby, I do. It's wonderful, even better than I'd planned. When do we tie the knot?
Anytime you say, Joe.
Well, the sooner the quicker. How about tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow?
Well, why not? There's no 3-day law in this state. We'll get married in the morning. I'll take care of my business in the afternoon, and we'll leave on our honeymoon immediately.
But I haven't anything to wear.
No, we'll buy you clothes as we go along.
But...
the best shops, everything first class. Money no object.
All right.
Great.
I hope we're doing the right thing, Joe.
Right. Baby, it's perfect. Being married to you by your old man is everything I need. How's that for a laugh, huh? The judge who sent me to reform school, marrying me to his daughter. Of course, he wouldn't know about it till later, but just thinking about it put me even with life right then. The next morning, after giving Jake and Marty a last-minute warning to keep their noses clean, I met Martha in the county clerk's office. We got our license and drove out to the Henning farm.
It's my turn to be nervous today, Joe.
Why? Lots of people get married.
I know, but... Oh, Joe, are you sure you want to marry me?
I was never sure of anything in my life.
I'm glad one of us is sure.
What do you mean?
Well, your coming to Newton's changed my whole life, Joe. Before you arrived, I knew exactly where I stood. What I was going to do, almost what I'd be doing in 5 years, 10 years, 20.
It'd be pretty dull, wouldn't it?
Dull? Maybe. But still, it gave me a feeling of security. I'm not very old, Joe. I'm not very experienced. I know you're exciting and different, and when we leave here, you'll be all I have.
Yeah.
Both Bob and my dad have warned me that I don't know you well enough to marry you.
Well, then why do it?
Because I can't seem to help myself, Joe.
How old are you, Martha?
18.
18.
How old did you think I was?
Why, I don't know. 25, 26. Who can tell a dame's age from the time she's 16 till she's 30? How old is Bob?
23.
18 and 23. I'm 34. Hey, how come Bob's cashier of the bank if he's only 23?
Well, Bob's father used to be cashier until he was killed during a bank robbery when Bob was 16. The bank gave Bob a job.
That was generous of him. This town sure takes care of its kids.
Bob's very grateful. I don't know how many times he's told me that if anyone ever tried to rob the bank while he was there, he'd die before he gave up a cent.
Yeah, well, people act differently when there's a gun against their ribs.
Bob wouldn't. His father died fighting, unarmed, with a gun against his ribs.
Well, there's no explaining suckers. Come on, let's get in here and get your dad to tie the knot.
When Martha opened the door, I reached into my pocket and felt for the marriage license. Then, all of a sudden, I knew I couldn't do it, not to a kid like Martha. Newton might be able to send me over the road at 14 and put Bob Rogers to work at 16, but Newton couldn't make me wreck Martha's life at 18. So I kissed her once. Not the way I'd kissed her before, but the way I would have kissed her if I'd been decent and maybe 10 years younger. And I said goodbye and turned and ran back to the car. All of a sudden, I was afraid. That Marty, I was afraid for Bob. Afraid that Martha would force Jake to go to the bank with him without waiting for me. I was scared and I drove like the devil. Just as I pulled into town, I saw Marty and Jake going to the bank. I saw Marty with his gun in Bob's ribs and Bob getting ready to fight, unarmed, so I pulled my gun and yelled.
Marty!
It's a boss, Marty.
Who says he's a boss?
I say so, Marty. Come away from that kid or I'll prove it.
Okay, Joe, you asked for it.
You'd have to do better than that, Marty. Get him, Jake. He's crazy. Nice shooting, Jake.
Thanks, boss. I knew we shouldn't have come without you. I told Marty. He shoots pretty good, too, Joe. Awful good.
I didn't get the bank, and I didn't get even with Judge Henning, though maybe I did in a way. But I did get back home, didn't I?
Yes, Joe. You got back home. And when you get well...
Oh, don't get me. I'm not going to get well. I don't want to get well. I've seen the other side of things for once, and I don't like my side anymore.
What I can't understand, Joe, is why you'd stand there like a clay pigeon letting this Marty shoot you to pieces without firing back. It just wasn't human.
Sonny, I never carried a loaded gun in my life. I was always scared of them things.
And so the curtain comes down on the final act of this week's Stars Over Hollywood show as presented by Carnation Evaporated Milk and starring John Payne. In just a moment, we'll have news about next week's show. Meantime, how about a curtain call, John Payne?
Well, call me Johnny on the spot, Art.
Only at this point, John, we have nothing but compliments to fire your way. That was a great job.
Well, thank you, Art. You know, I feel rather badly about Joe Gort, though. He wasn't a bad fella after all. Came to such a sad, sad end, however.
Still, that seems to be the path of crime, John. But right now, let's put tragic endings aside and turn to pleasant and promising beginnings. I'm talking about that wonderful start in life enjoyed by carnation babies everywhere. This should sound familiar to you, John, as the father of 3 healthy youngsters. As you know, babies' tiny digestive systems require delicate treatment, and Carnation Evaporated Milk is famous for gentleness and easy digestibility. Carnation is safe, too. Doubly safe, actually, because it's first pasteurized and then sterilized after the can is sealed. And above all, Carnation is a growing food, supplying important milk minerals and vitamin D for sturdy growth of bones and teeth. Is it any wonder 8 out of 10 mothers who feed their babies Carnation say their doctor recommended it? Not at all. Carnation, you see, is the milk every doctor knows. And now, John, for your outstanding performance today, here's a full month's supply of boutonnieres, this big bouquet of red and white carnations, just like those pictured on every can of Carnation Evaporated Milk.
That's just what I've always needed, Art. Thanks. Now, may I ask what next week's show has to offer?
Our star on next Saturday's Stars Over Hollywood show will be David Niven.
Oh, that's good. Davey always gives a fine performance. And what's the story?
It's a dramatic play about a pianist, and quite appropriately, the title is Fantasy Impromptu.
Well, I'll be sure to be listening, Art. But for now, it's goodbye.
Goodbye, John Payne. John Payne will soon be seen starring in the Pine Thomas production for Paramount, Caribbean Gold. The story on today's Stars Over Hollywood was written by Bill Hampton. Supporting Mr. Payne were Virginia Eiler, George Neese, Clayton Post, and Jack Crucian. Music was composed and conducted by Rex Corey. The program was directed by Don Clark. Ladies, when you shop for groceries today, be sure to have Carnation, the world's favorite brand of evaporated milk, on your shopping list. No other kind of milk has as many uses as Carnation.
Carnation for cooking.
Carnation for coffee.
Carnation for baby feeding.
Good, good, good. For milk that's extra good, you should get the brand that's called Carnation. Rich, rich, rich. For milk that's creamy rich, you should get the brand that's called Carnation.
And now for the Carnation Company and Stars Over Hollywood, this is Art Ballinger suggesting that you be sure to see the George Burns and Gracie Allen television show brought to you by Carnation Evaporated Milk. Tune in next Saturday and hear Stars Over Hollywood with David Niven, the famous international star of the screen, the stage, and radio. David Niven will be presented in person, playing a very dramatic role in Fantasy Impromptu. Stars Over Hollywood brings to you, in person, actors you have seen in motion pictures and heard on the radio, actors whom you know. For the world's greatest stars, presented in person, hear Stars Over Hollywood every Saturday. Stay tuned now for Grand Central Station, which follows immediately over most of these stations. Stars Over Hollywood comes to you from our Hollywood studios and is heard in Canada over the Dominion Network of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. This is the CBS Radio Network.